Good morning, Broncos country. It is Legends of Mile High. I am Thomas Hall, and today we are going to talk about Randy Gradishar and specifically about his Hall of Fame bid this year. It's been long overdue. I'm going to welcome a special guest, the Broncos Fan of the Year and Hall of Fame advocate, Ron Katz, is joining me today to talk about Randy Gradishar in Hall of Fame. Good morning, Ron. How are you today?
Good, Thomas. How are you doing? It's so good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming back on the show. It's great to have you. And this is a time where we've got a couple weeks left before the voters, convene and cast their ballot for the senior committee for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, you have been advocating, it seems like forever now, for Randy Gradishar. I mean,
Yes.
it's like he should have been in a long time ago, in my opinion. But here we are. It's going to be 2024, Hall of Fame class 2024. And can you tell us just a little bit about, what you're doing for Randy Gradishar for his Hall of Fame bid, and anything else that comes to mind about why Randy Gradishar deserves to be in the Hall of Fame?
Well, first off, Thomas, it takes a village. There's a lot of us. There's a lot of people in a lot of different corners of Broncos country, or even just, as you know, Hall of Fame aficionados, historians who believe this is something that needs to be corrected and that Randy needs to be in. I would just tell you from a personal standpoint, taking away all my orange and blue Bronco stuff, um, there's a lot of seniors, those who were eligible for the Hall of Fame for 20 years after 5 years of their playing career was over. There's a lot of those folks who are getting up there in years, in their 80s. There have been posthumous Cliff Branch last year, Ken Riley this year, uh, Chuck Howley in bad health this year, where he couldn't have the joy of attending with his family. And that's one of the reasons why I advocate on a big picture, uh, with more than just the Broncos. But Randy Gradishar, I mean, I remember watching him. You just look for 53, and that's where everything was happening on the field.
Yeah.
Uh, so, but he's got the honors.
Right.
He's got the accolades. If you look at what he's done, 9 years of starting, 8 of those 9 years, and that's like almost 90%, like 89%, 90%. He was all pro, AP or Sporting News, and
Yep.
7 times Pro Bowl. But that's when you got elected by your peers.
When it mattered.
That's not like the 10th alternate, or people stuffing the ballot box to do the fan vote or anything like that. That was when it really, really meant something. And so you had that. You also had Defensive Player of the Year.
Right.
Von Miller, Champ Bailey haven't done that. Randy
Right.
Gradishar did, and he finished third one year, 77, the Orange Crush year, the big Orange Crush year, and he and Lyle Alzado basically could have been co-MVP, co-defensive MVPs based on the votes. They had more votes combined than the first place finisher. He also got votes 2 other times. That's 4 out of 9. So I mean, the guy has like incredible stats, incredible credibility, incredible accomplishments that are comparable or greater than guys who are in the Hall of Fame. So that's why he belongs. The only thing that was a little bit of a gray area was he played only 10 years, which was a big deal
Right.
to the selectors back then. They had less slots open for moderns. So I get that happened. But with 2017, Kenny Easley, Terrell Davis, last year, Tony Bazzelli, that has been alleviated. So it's
Right.
not just like Gail Sayers or someone along those lines getting in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned watching him, right? And I would like to, it would be interesting to know how many of the Pro Football Hall of Fame voters today actually watched him in real time or have gone back and watched any of his film. Because when I turn on Randy Gradishar's film, when I look at those old games, like you said, he was always around the ball, making tons of tackles. He was the star of the defense. If you go back, you can put stats and awards aside, just go watch the games. You could see how great he was. And this was, in my mind, in the heyday of the middle linebacker, kind of the heart of the defense. They were the guys back then. And to see him, he was as good in my mind as many of the others like you talk about that are already in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but it's just hard to quantify. And in the select, you mentioned the selectors. I've met a lot of them. Some of them are seniors committee or contributors, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from them. And these are people of very high integrity. This is not a conspiracy against Randy or the Broncos. It's just a process that was older that needed to be retooled. I've been part of advocating to go for. You just can't have one senior for every
Yeah.
year. And there's probably about at least 30 that you could almost close your eyes and put in. But you asked about the selectors. Most of them have seen him play. There's a lot of
Yep.
older selectors. They have seen him play. But it's just there's so many out there. And keeping him relevant and really highlighting what he's done. And also, too, the Orange Crush is something that one of the selectors mentioned on one of our fellow fan bases podcasts. And I would never say, oh, like put one of the Broncos from the Orange Crush in, because that sounds very self-serving. There's 29, 31 other fan bases that would have 2 or 3 guys and say, put them in, right?
Right.
But this is actually a very respected selector would harken back to. There's no one from the Orange Crush in there. And I'll give you a little factoid. Look at the 70s defenses. Before defensive backs couldn't grab the receiver all the way down the field and a lot of the other physicality, before that was removed in the late 70s, you had Fearsome Foursome, Purple People Eaters, Doomsday in Dallas, Steel Curtain in Pittsburgh, and even the no-name defense in Miami. All 5 of those have at least one or more Hall of Famers, some multiple from those defenses. The Orange Crush has 0, and here's another crazy factoid. I don't want to get anyone too upset, but my friend Andy, who's a historian, gave me this factoid, and I checked it out, and it's just jaw-dropping. Take the first 37 Super Bowls. That's 74 different unique teams in terms of the years have played in those Super Bowls. 73 of them have at least one Hall of Famer. Right. And the 77 Broncos are the only one on the outside looking in. And then you can actually go to 90 teams and 45 Super Bowls based on Rodgers, Breeze, Fitzgerald, and Peppers being likely first or second ballot guys in the next few years. So it's something that's recognized. And I actually bounced that off a selector in Canton this past weekend, and he was impressed by that stat. He had not known of that.
Yeah, exactly. I've got Ron Katz with me. We're talking about Randy Gradishar, his Hall of Fame bid. And again, Ron's a former Broncos Fan of the Year, Hall of Fame advocate. Just want to shout out to Greg Casey coming in, giving us a super sticker, 2 actually. So thank you very much this morning, Greg. Thanks for being here. We're talking Randy Gradishar this morning. I just want to talk a little bit about what you said, Ron. Before I do that, I'm going to just say hi to Michael Ronquillo, great supporter of the show, saying good morning to you and I and Legends of Mile High. So thank you for coming in, Michael. As always, you're appreciated and your comments are appreciated. But so when we talk about the 77 Orange Crush defense, this wasn't a flash in the pan, right? This was a defense that was good before 1977 and after 1977. In fact, one of the top, in most categories, you can look, they're top 5 in almost every defensive category for about a 4 or 5 year period. So it wasn't like this defense was good one year. And that has to do, Randy Gradishar was the best player on that team. And they had some other great, as you mentioned, Lyle Alzado split the votes. Neither one of them got in, but somebody should have been in from that 77 defense had the votes not been split for Defensive Player of the Year. But even after that, Randy Gradishar in 79 was in the, getting votes for the the Defensive Player of the Year. So this wasn't a flash in the pan. This was a great defense. And as you know, Ron, I think had they won that Super Bowl in 77, there would be at least 1 or 2 players probably in the Hall of Fame from that defense already.
Easily.
But the offense had 8 turnovers. So it's pretty tough to win when that's going on. So what are your feelings about the Hall of Fame voters now with more information, right? Like you said, you've you've given them this other factor they didn't know. Do you think that they're kind of buying into this, these facts that are coming out? Or you think they're listening?
Oh, absolutely. I think if you ask any Hall of Fame selector what their challenges are, the big deal for them is just there's so many great players out there.
Right.
If you look at the final 12 for the seniors, I mean, you have a couple guys in their 80s, Eddie Meador, Maxie Bond, also some other guys who are up there in years in their 70s or greater, and also Steve McMichael, who has ALS. And, you know, there's this is humanity. I mean, Ken Riley just got in. Like I said, I was in tears at the Gold Jacket dinner, seeing his family on stage, just knowing like he should have been there with his family. But you're talking about the selectors and all that. They take that into consideration. They're very smart people, but they're trying to make apples to apples, right? They're trying to say, okay, like Randy Gradishar and Chuck Howley, Randy Gradishar and Tommy Nobis, or someone along those lines. And they're trying to be fair. And it's not easy because we all want our guy in. Obviously, I'm very, very loyal to Randy, but it's just not an easy task that they have. I do think they are starting to come around to it. The big thing was the process change. A bunch of us petitioned the new president of the Hall of Fame, Jim Porter. Some of the selectors asked for 2 senior slots instead of 1. I actually sent a letter, asked for 3. And I'm sure others did too, for that same aforementioned reason, to get the backlog addressed. And so what they did last year, well, for this class, they put the 2 previous runners up in, because there was a split, as long story, there's a split committee, not ideal in alternating years. But so they expanded the committee to 12. All 12 finalists, including Randy, get a pitch for 5 minutes. So everyone's on an even playing field as far as their attributes. So they took the 2 previous runners up, and Chuck Howley, who played for the Cowboys, like the only MVP of a Super Bowl, which his team lost. Very, very great that he made it. And he's 86 and not great health. So he was able to enjoy it with his family, even at home. So now we're moving forward. And Randy, Sterling Sharp, Shannon's brother, who had a shorter career, and that's why he didn't make it in modern. And Bob Kuchenberg ended up being the finalist last year. My understanding is that Randy was one of the strongest support that did not get in. So it was a matter of taking that ball to the end zone, making sure he stays viable, and also his attributes. For example, the Orange Crush example in relation to the other defenses, or the Super Bowl example. Just making sure that stays out there throughout the year. In fact, Bob Kuchenberg did not make the final 12 this year. The guy was an 8-time modern finalist. So it's not just Broncos not in the Hall of Fame. It's a process that wasn't perfect, that Jim Porter, as the new president, is trying to address with the board, but it's evolving. But this new format definitely gives Randy more of an opportunity, where if they were just talking about one guy every year, it's just insanity.
It is great to see that they are making some changes, because they have to be. Like you said early, there's a bunch of players, at least 30, maybe more, that we could say they deserve. And then after that, these are senior candidates, 30 that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And then after that, there's many, many more that have an argument, right? There's some kind of like no-brainers that we're thinking about, but you could come up with 100 seniors if you really wanted to, that have an argument for the Hall of Fame. And I can think of several Broncos seniors right now that have an argument. So changing the process has been very beneficial, even though it's not as many as we'd like to see to address the backlog, but they're making progress. So that is great. I kind of tip my hat to the Hall of Fame for making those changes. What, in your mind, I know that social media I firmly believe social media has had a big impact on some of these unknowns, the people that we have wanted to advocate for a long time, like Gradishar, Terrell Davis, all these people that weren't getting in. What do you think the effect of social media has on the voters? And what can fans do to kind of help keep Gradishar's name out there in the next couple of weeks? Because that's the vote. We got 2 weeks left. Not actually less, I think, than 2 weeks.
11 days. 11 days.
Yeah, 11 days, right? Until they cast their ballot. Is there anything we can do in the meantime?
Well, there's a lot. And the big thing too is, and I want to emphasize this, these selectors are people of very high integrity. They take very seriously the legacy of greatness for the Hall of Fame and the sport, and positive encouragement to them, not anything negative or agendas or politics or anything like that is helpful to support his case. What did Randy do that was great? Some talking points and things like that, not anything of a negative nature if they're talking about another candidate or having that transparency. First off, that's important. I'm not sure if you can see this. This is my Gradishar sign, but Gradishar, FORPFHOF is a good hashtag that I've used with a lot of videos, factoids, and things like that. Occasionally, I'll tag in the selectors.
Right.
Social media has been big because it's connected us, and we're part of an organization not in Hall of Fame that talks about these candidates, talks about comparisons, has some historians. I mean, big shout out to Paul Lawrence, Jack Silverstein. I know Ken Crippen's joined us occasionally. I mean, this is credibility in talking about things like that. But just keeping it out there in the social media. I've done it from the standpoint as a fan. I've been at Super Bowl weeks, like parading around in orange from head to toe. Very different than what I'm wearing right now.
Sure.
But I've been at events wearing something like this with a Gradishar sticking out of my pocket. Yep. There are other people too, and I want to give a quick shout out. There are people working behind the scenes, from the Broncos to alums. I met Phil Olson, who was in Canton. We connected. He saw my shirt. Wait, there's the shirt. I can't figure where I'm at. I had a custom shirt made with Randy's attributes on the back. You can't see them, but also that great picture on the front. And we got to connecting. I know he and Phil Long Chevrolet in the Springs are doing a lot of stuff to really make sure that Randy's advocated properly. Also, too, if anyone in Broncos country is in the Denver area, keep on checking on Ticketmaster for training camp tickets. Next Tuesday, August 15th, Randy is going to be the alumni there signing autographs, doing meet and greet. I know even though he's not a selector, that's Peter King's day to be in Denver. So, Peter has that column on Monday morning, Football Morning in America. Right. And, if we have a strong show of support for Randy there, then, that's something. Peter's a very good-hearted man and has given me a lot of ideas and insights through his events over the years, too. So there's just a lot of that stuff. Keep your eyes and ears open and be enthusiastic in a positive way. We can do this.
I'll tell you, I've been out at training camp and it's full out there. So if we can max out those tickets for August 15th, go see Randy Gradishar. I mean, this guy's a legend. I mean, if you're a new fan, go out there anyway. Even if you've never watched him, go out there, get his autograph, show support. August 15th, we got Ron Katz, you're the Broncos fan of the year in 2021. Am I getting that
yes,
right?
Sir. Yes, sir.
We're talking Randy Gradishar, and there's some things you don't have, like you said, be civil. If you want to go out and talk about Randy Gradishar's Hall of Fame bid, make sure you're being polite, but share some facts or share some quotes from some former coaches. And I mean, Chuck Knox had a great coach saying Randy Gradishar was a great linebacker, and he certainly belongs in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, right? That he's saying it, and legendary Steve Largent, same thing. Randy Gradishar absolutely should be in the Hall of Fame, and he was surprised. He quoted that he wasn't already. These are things that can be said, right? But you don't have to result to, like you said, agendas or insults or say. Yeah, and I've been caught up in it too. I've been like, oh, what's the problem with getting these Broncos in? There's got to be some sort of agenda. I'll say that there isn't, right? I mean, there's so many deserving Hall of Fame players out there and contributors. It's hard to get people in because there's so few. It's a select club. It's more. I think the Pro Football Hall of Fame is a more select club than the other pro sports. I think it's harder to get into the Hall of Fame, and it should be. But we have to remember there's been several Broncos that have got in lately, so we have to be happy with what we've got, and then to continue to get, the name out there, like Randy Gradishar or whoever's next up, really to go. So you were going to say something, Ron, so go ahead.
Yeah. You're talking about, for those who never saw Randy play. And I actually, when I was I have done Super Bowl week on a budget, 17
Yes.
of the last 22 years, only 2 games. But I met Dan Orlovsky at the NFL Live set for ESPN, and I gave him one of my handouts for Randy,
Yep.
and he legitimately and genuinely said, "Tell me about this guy." My elevator speech was, I said, "Dan, think of Ray Lewis without the look at me." I mean, it's a different era.
Sure.
In terms of showmanship then versus now. I said, think of Ray Lewis. He's on the line of scrimmage. You think he's going to blitz or try to get the run or get the quarterback. And then the play evolves. And guess who's 20 yards downfield deflecting the pass or intercepting it? And I would also say, take a look at, if you ever Google, and it's on my timeline a few times on Twitter, Randy Gradishar's 93-yard touchdown interception against the Cleveland Browns in 1980. It's one of the most fantastic plays of his career. It meant a lot to him because his dad had passed away just before then. And he's from the kind of near Cleveland area, 52 miles from Canton, actually, in Champion, Ohio. But so he faked a run stop or a blitz up the middle. So Brian Sipe checks out of the play, does a fake, rolls to the left for either a run or pass. And guess who's onto it the whole way? Randy's like 5-10 yards downfield, gets his big paw in the middle of that pass. It pops in the air, goes on Tom Jackson's chest, pops up.
Who's on the ground?
Randy's like following that ball, and his teammates, like Louis Wright's hysterical, would joke about how long it took him to get to the end zone on the other side of the dog pound. But 93-yard touchdown. And this was like a 10-6 game that was about to be 13 or 17-6. And all of a sudden, it's the Broncos leading 13-10 in a game they win 19-16, the only touchdown. That's the impact of a Randy Gradishar. And I said Ray Lewis. Well, and quotes. Well, Walter Payton, the late, great Walter Payton, said that Randy Gradishar gave him the hardest hit he's ever had.
Yep.
I mean, that's pretty high praise from someone like that who avoided getting hit really hard most of his career.
Right. And dished out punishment too. I love watching Walter.
Yes,
he
exactly.
Dished out punishment. So to get a some sort of comment like that's huge. I'll tell you though, the other thing that people, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you could argue that Randy Gradishar was the greatest short yardage goal line middle linebacker of all time. He was always in the mix, stopping the running back from getting that yard they needed. And I was watching, John Turney, I believe, has been posting a lot of those highlights where he reads the play so well. But you have to remember too, right? These awards that a lot of people point to, this was during a time when there was only one award that was given out. It was one middle linebacker award. So he was competing with Jack Lambert and for other greats during that time, and he still got all these awards. It's incredible.
And let me just point out too, one of the big things that selectors look at is all decade. And so when you only have one middle linebacker slot for the 70s and 80s, well, he lost out to Dick Butkus at the end of his career. And Mr. Butkus had Defensive Player of the Year in 1970. So it's not like he just got a career achievement award, but he wasn't playing at the top of his knees were just ravaged by 72, 73. But he still had some honors in that decade. And then Jack Lambert with the 4 Super Bowl trophies. And then in the 80s, it was Mike Singletary and Lambert, and Singletary played a greater part of the decade. So that's what kept him out. And I would also point out for 1970s, the great Willie Lanier, who's a Hall of Famer, did not make all decade either. So it was a golden era for middle linebackers then. And it's just like the way wide receivers have been as of recent, but you don't see someone saying, well, Isaac Bruce shouldn't be in because Jerry Rice, T.O., Randy Moss were in the same era. Was the player great? Did he dominate? Was he a difference maker? Just like fantastic player. I mean, I didn't grow up in Denver. I lived back east, and when I would get those West Coast games, the late game, all I'd have to do is just look and see where 53 was.
Right.
And then you'd know what was happening on the field. And speaking of quotes, this T-shirt of mine, and you probably can't see it because it's way down low, but it said, "Randy Gradishar played as if he was in the opponent's huddle," and that's from the late scouting guru Joe Bushbaum, who Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick relied upon and actually almost hired for their teams. So this isn't just Broncos country saying, "Hey, put one of our greats in." This is someone who is truly great, who's been waiting 35 years, and it's time. And hopefully we get good news on the 22nd.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully, I'm going to give a shout out to Gary Palmer coming in with some support, saying Gradishar for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Thanks, Ron. So, Gary, thank you for coming in saying that. And what? So the thing that I keep thinking about is, you can go back and watch the games, right? You can do a lot of different things, but at this point, the case is pretty much out there, right? I mean, keep his mind, name in people's mind, and everything. But from my standpoint, I'm watching. I'm on social media. I'm watching. There's people from other fan bases. It's not just Broncos that are saying it's time. There's people from other fan bases. There's historians that that don't have any allegiance to the Broncos. Everybody is really pointing to this. It is time to get Randy Gradishar in the Hall of Fame. And so when you've got other fan bases that are doing that, it's pretty obvious that he's been left out for far too long. So hopefully this is his year. But again, we really need to just kind of, if you see that hashtag, the Gradishar for PFHOF out there, retweet it, right? Or do something to kind of get it out there. But let's keep his name in front of the voters. I think they probably at this point have heard a lot about Randy Gradishar, and hopefully they're going into that room to talk about him and cast that ballot. I'm almost done here with the show, but I got one more question for you, Ron. That is, after Randy Gradishar, right? Let's say he gets in 2024, because I really think it's his year. Who's next up? Who in your mind should be that next Broncos that we really push for?
Or if you're talking about seniors in terms of guys from the past, first off, it's going to be a challenge to get anyone in for probably 3 to 5 years, just because there's 3 slots per year. It looks like it's going to be expanded.
Good.
But you have a lot of different fan bases and a lot of players from other teams that are still in that kind of abyss. But I would say Carl Mecklenburg is a favorite for me based on his All-Pro and Pro Bowl metrics, and doing it the front 7 and sometimes in one game, all 7.
Right.
But Louis Wright was the original shutdown cornerback. He doesn't have huge interception totals, but if you look at his All-Pro, Pro Bowl, the guy just made plays, and
Right.
and they threw away from him because there wasn't that kind of guy on the other side necessarily. And the other one I would give you, I love Dennis Smith as well, but the other guy, if you look at tape of Rich Tombstone Jackson,
Yep.
the stats were not robust back then for sacks. He was at the Denver Broncos QB club. He came over to a friend of mine, Ricky, and me, and before they even started, he's like, "I only got credit for half the sacks. They didn't give me credit for everything I did." The guy was just a character and he's so passionate about the game. But if you ever saw pictures of him or film of him, in fact, I showed it to a former NFL defensive lineman who was next to me on the plane coming back from Canton, and he was like, his jaw was dropping at just the impact of Tombstone and how just like exceptional he was. And now the shorter careers are being recognized. That would be someone possibly, but it's really hard with the 30 to 50 guys who are still there, and it keeps on getting adding up. But those are the guys. I love all of them. I think I just hope Randy is a starting point and a launching point, and that he gets to enjoy this honor with his family.
Absolutely.
Especially being so close to champion Ohio, right?
Right. Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
think?
I think it's his year. And I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. I don't want to jinx it, knock on wood or whatever. He's got a lot of push. So let's hope that does happen. And yeah. So Ron, thank you so much for coming here and talking about Gradishar. And remind everybody again, if you're going to say anything, especially if you're going to say something to the actual selectors, be polite, stick to the facts, or don't make them mad, right? I guess don't give them a reason to be like,
Exactly.
okay, well, that guy made me mad, so heck with Randy Gradishar. Be polite, but stick the facts.
Exactly. And there was someone last year who, in transparency, this is one of the good guys for the selectors and seniors who finished fourth, fifth, and sixth, to be transparent to everyone asking. And my understanding is certain fans launched on him with some very unpleasant tweets.
Mm,
And this is someone trying to help us and trying to advocate for the legacy and the greatness of the Hall of Fame. These
right.
senior selectors are good people. They mean the best and they do their homework. They sift through so much information and they're interested in different perspectives.
Yep. So give them a different perspective, but be polite. So again,
Exactly.
it was Ron. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on the show. And I hope that this is Randy Gradishar's year. You and I both hope hopefully you don't have to print up a 2025 version.
Oh,
of
please,
that.
no. I have a whole collection
It's been a
going
lot of
back to
years.
2021.
Well, thank you very much. And so I just want to give one announcement before we end the show. I'm hoping to get Ken Lanier, great offensive tackle, on the show. So look for that coming up. That'll be wonderful to talk with him on the show. But again, thank you so much, Ron, and have a wonderful day. And thank you very much to everybody that tuned in today.
Thank you.